Hi. I figured out what was wrong with my mic. I'm very sorry about the sound inconsistency. I don't know what happened. I don't know why those settings got changed. And I'm sorry that I did not catch it earlier. As it is, I will try to keep my voice quiet so as not to blast you out of your seat. And hopefully you will have caught this fairly early on, or if you were listening to this while trying to fall asleep, then I am very, very sorry. But hopefully you weren't. So, anyway, part 2, chapter 25, and part 2 is called Pursuits. She could feel the mirrors waiting for her in each room, much the same as you felt, without opening your eyes, that the first snow of winter has just fallen outside your window. Miss Foley had first noticed, some years ago, that her house was crowded with bright shadows of herself. Best, then, to ignore the cold sheets of December ice in the hall, above the burrows, in the bath. Best skate the thin ice lightly. Pause, the weight of your attention might crack the shell. Plunged through the crust, you might drown in depths so cold, so remote, that all the past lay carved in tombstone marbles there. Ice water would syringe your veins. Transfixed, at the mirror sill, you would stand forever, unable to lift your gaze from the proofs of time. Yet, tonight, with the echo of running feet of the 3 boys dying away, she kept feeling snow fall in the mirrors of her house. She wanted to thrust through the frames to test their weather. But she was afraid that doing this might cause all the mirrors to somehow assemble in billion-fold multiplications of self. An army of women marching away to become girls, and girls marching to become infinitely small children. So many people, crammed in one house, would provoke suffocation. So what must she do about Mears, Will Holloway, Jim Nightshade, and the nephew? Strange. Why not say my nephew? Because, she thought, from the first when he came to the door he didn't belong. His proof was not proof she kept waiting for. What? Tonight. The carnival. Music, the nephew said, that must be heard. Rides that must be ridden. Stay away from the maze where the winter slept. Swim around with the carousel where summer sweet as clover, honeygrass, and wild mint kept its lovely time. She looked out at the night lawn from which she had not yet retrieved the scattered jewels. Somehow she guessed this was a way the nephew had of getting rid of the 2 boys who might stop her using this ticket she took from the mantel. Carousel. Admit 1. She had waited for the nephew to come back. With time passing, she must act on her own. Something must be done, not to hurt. No, but slow down interference from such as Jim and Will. No one must stand between her and nephew, her and carousel, her and lovely gliding ride around summer. The nephew had said as much by saying nothing, by just holding her hands and breathing baked apple pie scent from his small pink mouth upon her face. She lifted the telephone. Across the town she saw the light in the stone library building, as all the town had seen it over the years. She dialed. A quiet voice answered. She said, "Library? Mr. Holloway? This is Miss Foley, Will's teacher. In 10 minutes, please meet me in the police station." "Mr. Holloway?" A pause. "Are you still there?" Chapter 26. "I'd have sworn," said one intern, "when we first got there, that old man was dead." The ambulance and the police car had pulled up at the same moment at the crossroads going back into town. One of the interns had called over. Now, one of the policemen called back, "You're joking." The interns sat in their ambulance. They shrugged. "Yeah, sure. Joking." They drove on ahead, their faces as quiet and white as their uniforms. The police followed, with Jim and Will huddled in back, trying to say more. But the police started talking and laughing, retelling everything that happened to one another. So Will and Jim wound up lying, giving wrong names again, saying they lived around the corner from the police station. They let the police drop them at 2 dark houses near the station. They ran up on those porches and grabbed the doorknobs and waited for the prowl car to swing off around the corner into the station. And when they came down and followed, and stood looking at the yellow lights of the station all sun-colored at midnight, and Will glanced over and saw the whole evening come and go in Jim's face, and Jim watching the police station windows as if at any moment darkness might fill every room and put the lights out forever. On my way back into town, thought Will, I threw away my tickets, but look, Jim still has his in his hand. Will trembled. What did Jim think, want, plan, now that dead men lived and only lived through the fire of white-hot electric chair machines? Did he still very much love carnivals? Will searched. Faint echoes. Yes, they came. They went in Jim's eyes. For Jim, after all, was Jim. And even standing there in the calm light of justice falling on his cheekbones. The chief of police, Will said. He'd listen to us. Yeah, said Jim. He'd wake long enough to send for the butterfly net. Hell, William, hell. Even I don't believe what's happened the last 24 hours. But we got to find someone higher up. Keep trying. Now that we know what the score is. Okay, what's the score? What's the carnival done so bad? Scare a woman with a mere maze? So she scared herself, the police would say. Burgled the house? Okay, where's the burglar? Hiding inside an old man's skin? Who'd believe that? Who'd believe that old man was ever a boy 12? What else is the score? Did the lightning rod salesman disappear? Sure, and left his bag, but he could have left town. That dwarf in the sideshow. I saw him, and you saw him. Looks kind of like the lightning rod man, sure, but again, can you prove he was ever big? No. Just like you can't prove Cougar was ever small. So that leaves us right here, Will, on the sidewalk. No proof except what we saw and us just kids. The carnival's word against ours. And the police had a fine time anyway there. Oh gosh, it's a mess. If only there was still some way to apologize to Mr. Cougar. Apologize? Will yelled. To a man-eating crocodile? Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat? I don't know. You still don't see we can't do business with those Almers and Goffs. Almers? Goffs? Jim gazed upon him thoughtfully. But that was just how boys talked to the creatures who dragged and swayed and slumped through their dreams. In the bad dream of Will's, the Almers moaned and gibbered and had no faces. In the equally bad dreams of Jim, the Goffs, his peculiar name for them, grew like monster menagerie paste mushrooms. Grew like, I think it might be meringue. Grew like monster meringue paste mushrooms? I don't know. Which fed on rats, which fed on spiders, which fed, in turn, because they were large enough, on cats. Almers, Goffs, said Will. You need a 10-ton safe to fall on you? Look at what happened to two folks already, Mr. Electrico, and that terribly crazy dwarf. All kinds of things can go wrong with people on that darn machine. We know, we've seen it. Maybe they squashed the lightning rod man down that way on purpose, or maybe something went wrong. Fact is, he wound up in a wine press anyway, got run over by a steamroller carousel, and so crazy now he doesn't even know us. Ain't that enough to scare the Jesus out of you, Jim? Why, maybe even Mr. Cressetti. Mr. Cressetti's on vacation. Maybe yes, maybe no. There's his shop, there's the sign, closed on account of illness. What kind of illness, Jim? He eat too much candy out on this show? He gets seasick at everyone's favorite ride? Cut it, Will. No, sir, I won't cut it. Sure, the merry-go-round sounds keen. You think I like being 13 all the time? Not me, but for cry, Jim, face it. You don't really want to be 20. What else we talked about all summer? Talk, sure, but throwing yourself head first in that taffy machine and getting your bones pulled along? Jim, you wouldn't know what to do with your bones then. I'd know, said Jim in the night. I'd know. Sure. You just go away and leave me here, Jim. Why, protested the other, I wouldn't leave you, Will. We'd be together. Together? You 2 feet taller and going around feeling your leg and arm bones? You looking down at me, Jim? And what we'd talk about, me with my pockets full of kite string and marbles and frog eyes, and you with clean, nice, and empty pockets and making fun. Is that what we talk about? Is that what we'd talk? And you be able to run faster and ditch me? I'd never ditch you, Will. Ditch me in a minute. Well, go on, Jim. Just go on. Leave me because I got my pocket knife and there's nothing wrong with me sitting under a tree playing mumbly peg. Will you get yourself plain crazy with the heat of all those horses racing around? But thank God they're not racing anymore. And it's your fault, cried Jim. He stopped. Will stiffened and made fists. You mean I should have let young, mean, and terrible get old, mean, and terrible enough to chew our heads off? Just let him ride around and hawk his spit in our eye? And maybe you with him, waving goodbye, going around again, waving so long, and all I gotta do is wave back, Jim. Is that what you mean? Shh, said Jim. Like you said, it's too late. Carousel's broken. And when it's fixed, they ride old, horrible Cougar back, make him young enough so he can speak and remember our names, and then they come like cannibals after us. Or just me, if you want to get in good with them. Go tell them my name and where I live. I wouldn't do that, Will. Jim touched him. Oh, Jim, you do see, don't you? Everything in its time, like the preacher said only last month. Everything one by one, not two by two. Will you remember? Everything, said Jim, in its time. And then they heard voices from the police station. In one of the rooms to the right of the entrance, a woman was talking now, and men were talking. Will nodded to Jim. They ran quietly over to pick their way through the bushes and look into the room. There sat Miss Foley. There sat Will's father. I don't understand, said Miss Foley. To think Will and Jim would break in my house, steal, run off. You saw their faces? Asked Mr. Holloway. When I screamed, they looked back under the light. She's not mentioning the nephew, thought Will. And she won't, of course. You see, Jim, he wanted to shout. It was a trap. The nephew waited for us to come prowling. He wanted us to get in so much trouble, no matter what we said to anybody, police, parents, that nobody'd listen to us about carnivals, late hours, merry-go-rounds, because our word'd be no good. I don't want to prosecute, said Miss Foley, but if they are innocent, where are the boys? Here, someone cried. Will, said Jim. Too late, for Will had jumped high and was scrambling through the window. Here, he said simply, as he touched the floor. Chapter 27. They walked home quietly, on the moon-colored sidewalks, Mr. Holloway between the boys. When they reached home, Will's father sighed. Jim, I don't see any reason to tear your mother to bits at this hour. If you promise to tell her this whole thing at breakfast, I'll let you off. Can you get in without waking her up? Sure. Look what we got. We? Jim nodded and took them over to fumble among the clusters of thick moss and leaves on the side of the house until they found the iron rungs they had secretly nailed in place to make a hidden ladder up to Jim's room. Mr. Holloway laughed, once, almost with pain, and a strange, wild sadness shook his head. How long has this gone on? No, don't tell. I did it too, your age. He looked up at the ivy toward Jim's window. Fun being out late, free as all hell, he caught himself. You don't stay out too long. This week was the very first time after midnight. Dad pondered a moment. Having permission would spoil everything, I suppose. Sneaking out to the lake, the graveyard, the rail tracks, the peach orchards, summer nights that counts. Gosh, Mr. Holloway, did you once? Yes. But don't let the women know, I told you. Up, he motioned. And don't come out again any night for the next month. Yes, sir. Jim swung monkey-wise to the stars, flashed through his window, shut it, drew the shade. Dad looked up at the hidden rungs, coming down, out of the starlight to the running free world of sidewalks that invited the 1,000-yard dash and the high hurdles of the dark bushes and the pole vault cemetery trellises and walls. You know what I hate most of all, Will? Not being able to run anymore, like you. Yes, sir, said his son. Let's have it clear now, said Dad. Tomorrow, go apologize to Miss Foley again. Check her lawn. We may have missed some of the stolen property with matches and flashlights. Then go to the police. Then go to the police chief to report. You're lucky you turned yourself in. You're lucky Miss Foley won't press charges. Yes, sir. They walked back to the side of their own house. Dad raked his hand in the ivy. Our place, too? His hand found a rung Will had nailed among the leaves. Our place, too. He took out his tobacco pouch, filled his pipe as they stood by the ivy, the hidden rungs leading up to warm beds, safe rooms, and then lit his pipe and said, I know you. You're not acting guilty. You didn't steal anything. No. Then why did you say you did to the police? Because Miss Foley, who knows why, wants us guilty. If she says we are, we are. You saw how surprised she was to see us come through the window. She never figured we'd confess. Well, we did. We got enough enemies without the law on us, too. I figured if we made a clean breast, they'd go easy. They did. At the same time, boy, Miss Foley's won, too, because now we're criminals. Nobody'll believe what we say. I'll believe. Will you? Will searched the shadows on his father's face, saw whiteness of skin, eyeball, and hair. Dad, the other night at 3 o'clock in the morning. 3 in the morning. He saw Dad flinch, as if from a cold wind, as if he smelled and knew the whole thing and simply could not move, reach out, touch, and pat Will. And he knew he could not say it. Tomorrow, yes. Some other day, yes. For perhaps with the sun coming up and the tents would be gone, the freaks off over the world, leaving them alone, knowing they were just scared enough not to push it, say anything, just to keep their mouths shut. Maybe it would all blow over. Maybe. Maybe. Yes, Will, said his father with difficulty, the pipe in his hand going dead. Go on. No, thought Will. Let Jim and me be cannibalized, but no one else. Anyone that knows gets hurt, so no one else must know. Aloud he said, In a couple of days, Dad, I'll tell you everything. I swear. Mom's honor. Mom's honor, said Dad at last, is good enough for me. Chapter 28. The night was sweet with the dust of autumn leaves that smelled as if the fine sands of ancient Egypt were drifting up to dunes beyond the town. How come, thought Will, at a time like this I can even think of 4,000 years of dust of ancient people sliding around the world, and me sad because no one notices except me and Dad here maybe, and even us not telling each other. It was indeed a time between. One second their thoughts all brambled Airedale, the next all silken slumbering cat. It was time to go to bed, yet still they lingered, reluctant as boys to give over and wander in wide circles to pillow and night thoughts. It was time to say much, but not at all. But not all. It was time after first discoveries, but not last ones. It was wanting to know everything and wanting to know nothing. It was the new sweetness of men starting to talk as they must talk. It was the possible bitterness of revelation. So while they should have gone upstairs, they could not depart this moment that promised others on not so distant nights, when man and boy becoming man might almost sing. So Will at last said carefully, Dad, am I a good person? I think so. I know so, yes. Will that help when things get really rough? It'll help. Will it save me if I need saving? I mean, if I'm around bad people and there's no one else good around for miles, what then? It'll help. That's not good enough, Dad. Good is no guarantee for your body. It's mainly for peace of mind. But sometimes, Dad, aren't you so scared that even the mind isn't peaceful? His father nodded, his face uneasy. Dad, said Will, his voice very faint, are you a good person? To you and your mother, yes, I try. But no man's a hero to himself. I've lived with me a lifetime, Will. I know everything worth knowing about myself. And adding it all up? The sum? As they come and go, and I mostly sit very still and tight. Yes, I'm all right. Then, Dad, asked Will, why aren't you happy? The front lawn at, let's see, 1:30 in the morning is no place to start a philosophical. I just wanted to know is all. There was a long moment of silence. Dad sighed. He took his arm, walked him over, and sat him down on the porch steps, relit his pipe. Puffing, he said, all right, your mother's asleep. She doesn't know we're out here with our tomcat talk. We can go on. Now look, since when did you think being good meant being happy? Since always. Since now, learn otherwise. Sometimes the man who looks happiest in town with the biggest smile is the one carrying the biggest load of sin. There are smiles and smiles. Learn to tell the dark variety from the light. The seal barker, the laugh shouter. Half the time he's covering up. He's had his fun and he's guilty, and men do love sin. Well, oh, how they love it, never doubt, in all shapes, sizes, colors, and smells. Times when troughs, not tables, suit our appetites. Hear a man too loudly praising others, and look to wonder if he didn't just get up from the sty. On the other hand, that unhappy, pale, put-upon man walking by, who looks all guilt and sin, why, often that's your good man with a capital G, Will. For being good is a fearful occupation. Men strain at it, sometimes break in two. I've known a few. You work twice as hard to be a farmer as to be his hog, I suppose. It's thinking about trying to be good that makes the crack run up the wall one night. Man with high standards, too. The least hair falls on him. Sometimes wilts his spine. He can't let himself alone. Won't lift himself off the hook if he falls just a breath from grace. Oh, it would be lovely if you could just be fine, act fine, not think of it all the time. But it's hard, right? The last piece of lemon cake waiting in the icebox, middle of the night. Not yours, but you lie awake in a hot sweat for it, eh? Do I need to tell you? Or a hot spring day, noon, and there you are, chained to your school desk, and way off there goes the river, cool and fresh, over the rockfall. Boys can hear clear water like that miles away. So minute by minute, hour by hour, a lifetime, it never ends, never stops. You got the choice this second, now this, next, and the next after that. Be good, be bad. That's what the clock ticks, and that's what it says in the ticks. Run, swim, or stay hot. Run, eat, or lie hungry. So you stay. But once stayed, Will, you know the secret, don't you? Don't think of the river again, or the cake, because if you do, you'll go crazy. Add up all the rivers you've never swum in, cakes never eaten, and by the time you get to my age, Will, it's a lot missed out on. But then you console yourself thinking, the more times in, the more times possibly drowned or choked on lemon frosting. But then, through plain dumb cowardice, I guess, maybe you hold off from too much. Wait. Play it safe. Look at me. Married at 39, Will. 39! But I was so busy wrestling myself, 2 falls out of 3. I figured I couldn't marry until I had licked myself good and forever. Too late, I found. You can't wait to become perfect. You got to go out and fall down and get up with everybody else. So at last I looked up from my great self-wrestling match one night when your mother came to the library for a book and got me instead. And I saw then and there that you take a man half bad and a woman half bad, but they're two good halves together, and you got one human all good to share between. That's you, Will, for my money. And the strange thing is, son, and sad too, though you're always racing out there on the rim of the lawns and me on the roof using books for shingles, comparing life to libraries, I soon saw you were wiser, sooner and better than I'll ever be. Dad's pipe was dead. He paused to tap it out and reload it. No, sir, Will said. Yes, said his father. I'd be a fool not to know I'm a fool. My one wisdom is, you're wise. Funny, Will said after a long pause. You've told me more tonight than I've told you. I'll think some more. Maybe I'll tell you everything. At breakfast, okay? I'll be ready if you are. Because I want you to be happy, Dad. He hated the tears that sprang to his eyes. I'll be all right, Will. Anything I could say or do to make you happy, I would. William. Dad lit his pipe again and watched the smoke blow away in sweet dissolvings. Just tell me I'll live forever. That would do nicely. His voice, Will thought, I never noticed. It's the same color as his hair. Pa, he said, don't sound so sad. Me? I'm the original sad man. I read a book and it makes me sad. See a film? Sad. Plays? They really work me over. Is there anything, said Will, that doesn't make you sad? One thing. Death. Boy, Will started. I should think that would. No, said the man with the voice to match his hair. Death makes everything else sad, but death itself only scares. If there wasn't death, all the other things wouldn't get tainted. And Will thought, here comes the carnival. Death like a rattle in one hand, life like candy in the other. Shake one to scare you, the other to offer one to make your mouth water. Here comes the sideshow, both hands full. He jumped to his feet. Dad, oh, listen, you'll live forever, believe me, or you're sunk. Sure, you were sick a few years ago, but that's over. Sure, you're 54, but that's young. And another thing. Yes, Willie? His father waited for him. He swayed. He bit his lips, then blurted out, Don't go near the carnival. Strange, his father said. That's what I was going to tell you. I wouldn't go back to that place for $1 billion. Will thought, that won't stop the carnival searching through town to visit me. Promise, Dad? Why don't you want me to go there, Will? That's one of the things I'll tell you tomorrow, or next week, or next year. You just gotta trust me, Dad. I do, son. Dad took his hand. It's a promise. As if at a signal, both turned to the house. The time was up. The hour was late. Enough had been said. They properly sensed they must go. The way you came out, said Dad, is the way you go in. Will walked silently to touch the iron rungs hidden under the rustling ivy. Dad, you won't pull these off? Dad probed one with his fingers. Someday, when you're tired of them, you'll take them off yourself. I'll never be tired of them. Is that how it seems? Yes, to someone your age, you figure you'll never get tired of anything. All right, son. Up you go. He saw his father looked up along the ivy and hidden path. You want to come up this way, too? No, his father said quickly. Because, said Will. You're welcome. That's all right. Go on. But still he looked at the ivy, staring in the dark morning light. Will sprang up, grabbed the first, the second, third rungs, and looked down. From just this distance, Dad looked as if he were shrinking, there on the ground. Somehow he didn't want to leave him behind, there in the night, like someone ditched by someone else, one hand up to move, but not moving. Dad, he whispered, you ain't got the stuff. Who says? Cried Dad's mouth silently, and he jumped. And laughing without sound, the man, swung up inside the house, unceasingly, hand over hand, foot after foot. He heard Dad slip, scramble, grab. Hold tight, he thought. Ah! The man breathed hard. Eyes tight, Will prayed. Hold. There. Now. The old man gusted out, sucked in, swore in a fierce whisper, then climbed again. Will opened his eyes and climbed, and the rest was smooth. High, higher, fine, sweet, wondrous, done. They swung in and sat upon the sill, same size, same weight, colored same by the stars, and sat embarrassed once more, and sat embraced once more with grand fine exhaustion, gasping on huge engulfed laughs which swept their bones together, and for fear of waking God, country, wife, mom, and hell, they snug clapped hands to each other's mouths, felt the vibrant, warm hilarity fountain there, and sat one instant longer, eyes bright with each other and wet with love. Then, with a last strong clasp, Dad was gone, the bedroom door shut. Drunk on the long night's doings, lulled away from fear toward better, grander things found in Dad, Will slung off limp fallen clothes with tipsy arms and delightfully aching legs, and like a fall of timber, chopped himself to bed. Chapter 29. He slept for exactly 1 hour. And then, as if remembering something he had only half seen, he woke, sat up, and peered out at Jim's rooftop. "The lightning rod," he yelped. "It's gone!" Which indeed it was. Stolen? No. Jim take it down? Yes. Why? For the shucks of it. Smiling, he had climbed to scuttle the iron, dare any storm to strike his house. Afraid? No. Fear was the new electric power suit Jim must try on for size. "Jim!" Wills wanted to smash his confounded window. "Go nail the rod back. Before morning, Jim, the blasted carnival will send someone to find where we live. I don't know how they'll come or what they'll look like, but Lord, your roof's so empty. The clouds are moving fast. That storm's rushing at us and—" Will stopped. What sort of noise does a balloon make adrift? None. No, not quite. It noises itself. It soughs like the wind billowing your curtains all white as breaths of foam. Or it makes a sound like the stars turning over in your sleep. Or it announces itself like moonrise and moonset. That last is best. Like the moon sailing the universal deeps, so rides a balloon. How do you hear it? How are you warned? The ear, does it hear? No. But the hairs on the back of your neck and the peach fuzz in your ears, they do. And the hair along your arms sing like grasshopper legs, frictioned and trembling with strange music. So you know, you feel, you are sure, lying abed, that balloon is submerging the ocean sky. Will sensed a stir in Jim's house. Jim, too, with his fine dark antennae, must have felt the waters part high over town to let a leviathan pass. Both boys felt a shadow bulk the drive between houses. Both flung up their windows. Both poked their heads out. Both dropped their jaws in surprise at this always exquisite timing, this delightful pantomime of intuition, of apprehension, their tandem teamwork over the years. Then, silver-faced, for the moon was rising, both glanced up. As a balloon wafted over, vanished. "Holy cow, what's a balloon doing here?" Jim asked, but wished no answer. For peering, they both knew the balloon was searching the best search ever. No car motor racket, no tires whining asphalt, no footsteps, streets, just the wind clearing a great Amazon through the clouds for a solemn voyage of wicker basket and storm sail riding over. Neither Jim nor Will crashed his window or pulled his shade. They simply had to stay motionless, waiting, for they heard the noise again like a murmur in someone else's dream. The temperature dropped 40 degrees. Because now the storm-bleached balloon whisper purled, plummet sank, softly down, its elephant shadow cooling gemmed lawns and sundials as they flaunted their swift gaze high through that shadow. And what they thought they saw was something akimbo and a rustle in the down-hung wicker carriage. Was that Head and Shoulders? Yes, with the moon like a silver cloak thrown up behind. Mr. Dark, thought Will. The Crusher, thought Jim. The Wart, thought Will. The Skeleton, the Lava Sipper, the Hanging Man, Monsieur Guillotine. No. the Dust Witch. The witch who might draw skulls and bones in the dust, then sneeze it away. Jim looked to Will, and Will looked to Jim. Both read their lips. The witch! Why? A wax crone flung out in a night ballooned search, thought Will. Why none of the others with their lizard venom, wolf fire, snake pit eyes? Why send a crumbled statue with blind nude ashes sewn tight with black widow thread? And then, looking up, they knew. For the witch, though peculiar wax, was peculiarly alive. Blind, yes, but she thrust down rust-splotched fingers which pelted, stroked the sluices of air which cut and splayed the wind, peeled layers of space, blinded stars which hovered and danced, then fixed and pointed, as did her nose. The boys knew even more. They knew that she was blind, but special blind. She could dip down her hands to feel the bumps of the world, touch house roofs, probe attic bins, reap dust, examine droughts that blew through halls and souls that blew through people, droughts vented from bellows to thump wrist, to pound temples, to pulse throat, and back to bellows again. Just as they felt that balloon sift down like an autumn rain, so she could feel their souls disinhabit, re-inhabit their tremulous nostrils. Each soul a vast, warm fingerprint, felt different. She could roll it in her hand, like clay, smelled different. Will could hear her snuffing his life away, tasted different. She savored them with her raw, gummed mouth, her puff-adder tongue, sounded different. She stuffed their souls in one ear, to shoot them out the other. Her hands played down the air, one for Will, one for Jim. The balloon shadow washed them with panic, rinsed them with terror. The witch exhaled. The balloon, freed of this small, sour ballast, uprose. The shadow passed. "Oh God," said Jim. "Now they know where we live." Both gasped. Some monstrous baggage brushed and dragged across the windows of Jim's house. "Will, she's got me!" "No, I think—" The drag, brush, rustle scurried from bottom to top of Jim's roof. Then Will saw the balloon whirl up, fly off towards the hills. "She's gone. There she goes. Jim, she did something to your roof. Shove the monkey pole over." Jim slid the long, slender clothesline pole over. Will fixed it on his sill, then swung out, hand over hand, swung until Jim pulled him through his window, and they barefooted it into Jim's clothes closet, and boosted and hoisted each other up inside the attic that smelled like lumber mills, old, dark, and too silent. Perched out on the high roof, shivering, Will cried, "Jim, there it is." And there it was, in the moonlight. It was a track like a snail paints on the sidewalk. It glistened. It glissered? There's an R, I promise. Glissered. It was silver slick. But this was a path left by a gigantic snail that, if it existed at all, weighed 100 pounds. The silver ribbon was a yard across, starting down at the leaf-filled rain trough, and sliver track shimmered to the rooftop, then tremored down the other side. "Why?" gasped Jim. "Why?" "Easier than looking for house numbers or street names. She marked your roof so you can see it for miles around, day or night." "Oh my gosh." Jim bent tough to touch the track. A faint, evil-smelling glue covered his finger. "Will, what'll we do?" "I got a hunch," the other whispered. "They won't be back till morning. They can't just start a rumpus. They got some plan. Right now, there's what we can do." Coiled across the lawn below like a vast boa constrictor waiting for them was the garden hose. Will was gone, down fast, didn't knock anything over or wake anyone up. Jim, on the roof, was surprised in no time at all when Will came scuttling up, all panting teeth, a water fizzing hose in his fist. "Will, you're a genius!" "Sure, quick!" They dragged the hose to drench the shingles, to wash the silver, flood the evil mercury paint away. Working, Will glanced off at the pure color of night, turning toward morn, and saw the balloon trying to make decisions on the wind. Did it sense? Would it come back? Would she mark the roof again, and they have to wash it off? And she mark it, and they wash it off until dawn? Yes, if need be. If only, thought Will, I could stop the witch for good. They don't know our names or where we live. Mr. Cougar's too near dead to remember or tell. The dwarf, if he is the lightning rod man, is mad, and God willing won't recollect. And they won't dare bother Miss Foley until morning. So grinding their teeth away out in the meadows, they've sent the dust witch to search. I'm a fool, grieved Jim, quietly, rinsing the roof where the lightning rod had been. Why didn't I leave it up? Lightning hasn't struck yet, Will said, and if we jump lively it won't. Now, over here. They showered the roof. Below, someone put down a window. Mom, Jim laughed bleakly. She thinks it's raining. Chapter 30. The rain ceased. The roof was clean. They let the hose snake away to thump on the night grass 1,000 miles below. Beyond town, the balloon still paused between unpromising midnight and promised and hoped for sun. Why is she waiting? Maybe she smells what we're up to. They went back down through the attic, and soon were in separate rooms and beds, after many fevers and chills of talk, and now lay quietly, separate, listening to hearts and clocks beat too quickly toward dawn. Whatever they do, thought Will, we must do it first. He wished the balloon might fly back. The witch might guess they had washed her mark off, and soar down to trace the roof again. Why? Because. He found himself staring at his Boy Scout archery set, of the big, beautiful bow and quiver of arrows arranged on the east wall of his room. Sorry, Dad, he thought, and sat up smiling. This time it's me out, alone. I don't want her going back to report on us for hours, maybe days. He grabbed the bow and quiver from the wall, hesitated, thinking, then stealthily ran the window up and leaned out. No need to holler loud and long, no. Just think real hard. They can't read thoughts. I know that's sure, or they wouldn't send her. And she can't read thoughts, but she can feel body heat and special temperatures and special smells and excitements. And if I jump up and down and let her know just by my feeling good about having tricked her, maybe. 4 o'clock in the morning, said a drowsy clock chime off in another land. Witch, he thought, come back. Witch, he thought louder and let his blood pound. The roof's clean, here. We made our own rain. You ought to come back and remark it. Witch. And the witch moved. He felt the earth turn under the balloon. Okay, witch, come on. There's just me, the no-name boy. You can't read my mind, but here's me spitting on you, and here's me yelling we tricked you, and the general idea gets through, so come on, dare, double dare you. Miles away, there was a gasp of assent, rising, coming near. Holy cow, he thought suddenly, I don't want her back to this house. Come on, he thrashed into his clothes. Clutching his weapons, he aped down the hidden ivy rungs and dogged the wet grass. Witch, here! He ran, leaving patterns, ran feeling crazy fine, wild as a hare who chewed some secret, delicious, sweetly poisonous root that now gallops him berserk. Knees striking his chin, shoes crushing wet leaves, he soared over a hedge. His hands full of bristly porcupine weapons, fear and joy a tumble of mixed marbles in his mouth. He looked back. The balloon swung near. It inhaled, exhaled itself, along from tree to tree, from cloud to cloud. Where am I going? He thought. Wait, the Redmond house. Not lived in years. 2 blocks more. There was a swift shush of his feet in the leaves, and the big shush of the creature in the sky, while moonlight snowed everything and stars glittered. He pulled up in front of the Redmond house, a torch in each lung, tasting blood, crying out silently, Here, this is my house. He felt a great river change in its bed in the sky. Good, he thought. His hand turned the doorknob of the old house. Oh God, he thought. What if they are inside, waiting for me? He opened the door on darkness. Dust came and went in that dark, and a harp-string gesticulation of spiders. Nothing else. Will jumped 2 at a time up the crumbling stairs, around and out on the roof where he stashed his weapons behind the chimney and stood tall. The balloon, green as slime, printed with titanic pictures of winged scorpions, ancient phoenixes, smokes, fires, clouded weathers, swung its wicker basket wheezing down. Witch, he thought, here! The dank shadow struck him like a bat wing. Will toppled, flung up his hands. The shadow was almost black flesh striking. He fell. He clutched the chimney. The shadow draped him, hushing down. It was cold as a sea cave in that cloud dark. But suddenly the wind of itself veered. The witch hissed in frustration. The balloon swam a washing circle up around. The wind, the boy thought wildly. It's on my side. No, don't go, he thought. Come back. For he feared she had smelled his plan. She had. She itched for his scheme. She snuffed, she gasped at it. He saw the way her nails filed and scraped the air as if running over grooved wax to seek patterns. She turned her palms out and down as if he were a small stove burning softly somewhere in another world, and she came to warm her hands at him. As the basket swung in an up-glided pendulum, he saw her squinched, blind-sewn eyes, the ears with moss in them, the pale, wrinkled apricot mouth mummifying the air it drew in, trying to taste what was wrong with his act, his thought. He was too good, too rare, too fine, too available to be true. Surely she knew that. And knowing it, she held her breath, which made the balloon suspend itself, half between inhale and exhale. Now, tremulously, experimentally, daring to test, the witch inhaled. The balloon, so weighted, sank, exhaled, so free of vapor, the craft descended. Now, the waiting, the holding of dank, sour breath in the wry tissues of her childlike body. Will waggled his fingers, thumb to nose. She sucked air. The weight of this one breath skimmed the balloon down. Closer, he thought. But careful. She circled her craft, scenting the sharp adrenaline wafted from his pores. He wheeled, followed as the balloon spun, and him reeling. You, he thought, you want to make me sick? Spin me, will you? Make me dizzy? There was one last thing to try. He stood very still with his back to the balloon. Which, he thought, you can't resist. He felt the sound of the green slime cloud, the kept bag of sour air, the squeal and stir of mouse wicker on wicker as the shadow cooled his legs, his spine, his neck. Close. The witch took air, weight, night burden, star, and cold wind ballast. Closer. Elephant shadow stroked his ears. He nudged his weapons. The shadow engulfed him. A spider flicked his hair. Her hand? Choking a scream, he spun. The witch, leaned out, was a mere foot away. He bent, snatched, and the witch tried to scream out breath when she smelled, felt, knew exactly what he held tight. But in reaction, horrified, she seized a breath, sucked weight, burdened the balloon, it dragged the roof. Will pulled the bowstring back, freighted with single destruction. The bow broke in 2 pieces. He stared at the unshot arrow in his hands. The witch let out a breath in one great sigh of relief and triumph. The balloon swung up. It struck him with its dry, rattled, chuckling, heavy-laden basket. The witch shouted again with insane happiness. Clutched to the basket rim, Will, with one free hand, drew back, and with all his strength threw the arrowhead flint up at the balloon flush. The witch gagged. She tore at his face. Then the arrow, a long hour it seemed in flight, razored a small vent in the balloon. Rapidly the shaft sank as if cutting a vast green cheese. The surface slid itself further in a wide, ripping smile across the entire surface of the gigantic pear. As the blind witch gabbled, moaned, blistered her lips, shrieked in protest, Will hung fast, hands gripped to wicker, kicking legs as the balloon wailed, whiffled, guzzled, mourned its own swift, gaseous death, as dungeon air raved out, as dragon breath gushed forth, and the bag, thus driven, retreated up. Will let go. Space whistled about him. He turned, hit shingles, fell, skidding down the inclined ancient roof, over, down to rim, to rain spout, where, feet first, he spilled into further emptiness, yelling, clawed at a rain gutter, felt it groan, give way as he swept the sky to see the balloon whistling, wrinkling, flying up like a wounded beast to evacuate its terrified exhalations in the clouds. A gunshot mammoth, not wanting to expire, yet in terrible flux, coughing out its stinking winds. All this in a flash. Then Will flailed into space, with no time to be glad for a tree beneath when it netted him, cut him, but broke his fall with mattress, twig, branch, and limb. Like a kite, he was held face up to the moon where, at his exhausted leisure, he might watch the last witch lamentations for a wake in progress as the balloon spiraled her away from the house, street, town, with inhuman mourns. The balloon smile, the balloon rip, was all-encompassing now, as it wandered in deliriums to die in the meadows from which it had come, sinking down now beyond all the sleeping, ignorant, and unknowing houses. For a long while Will could not move. Buoyed in the tree branches, afraid he might slip through and kill himself on the black earth below, he waited for the sledgehammer to subside in his head. The blows of his heart might jar him loose, crash him down, but he was glad to hear them, knowing himself alive. But then at last, gone calm, he gathered his limbs, most carefully searched for a prayer, and climbed himself down through the tree. Chapter 31. Nothing much else happened all the rest of that night. I think that's where we're going to end it. And yeah, chapter 31 is one sentence. That's it. So, figured I'd at least get that one in. But yeah, I'm definitely done for the day. That was 2 hours of reading. So I think I'm good. Hopefully this video didn't blast out your headphones or ears too much. And I'm sorry. Hopefully my settings will stay the same and they won't freak out and make me super quiet and where I have to dig around and fix them again. So, see you guys next time.